In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, God Almighty created the seas and oceans for us and granted us countless benefits from them. Among them, transportation and trade between countries. He created everything with the potential to serve us and gave us two of the most essential qualities to use these blessings responsibly: the mind and the conscience. Without them, a human loses the very essence of their humanity. Salam 98. The sinking ferry. This tragedy is one that pierced the heart of every Egyptian household. There was not a single family in Egypt that wasn't grieving or anxiously following the news. This ferry remains a scar of shame on everyone who contributed to this disaster through neglect or selfishness. Over 1,000 souls were lost, and for years, perhaps generations, prayers and curses will be directed at those responsible. Let us go back to the history of this ferry. It was designed for short internal transport routes within Italy, with a capacity of around 500 passengers and 200 cars. It operated that way for 20 years, until 1991, when its owners modified and upgraded it to carry more: 1,300 passengers and 320 vehicles. This change brought them greater profits for a few more years, until 1998, when it was deemed too old and worn. A report stated clearly that the ferry should no longer travel long distances and was better suited for carrying livestock. But Mahmoud Ismail, owner of Al Salam Express Company, bought it anyway. He renamed it Salam Boccaccio 98, refurbished it, and secured permits for Red Sea journeys between Egypt and Saudi Arabia. The ferry operated for another 8 years, completing over 400 voyages. Al Salam Express was a well-known transport company. Though notorious for incidents, including several previous ferry sinkings in the Red Sea, such as one in 1991 and another, Pride of Salam 95, which sank in 2005 with a Cypriot ship, still, no tragedy matched the horror of Salam 98. The date, February 2, 2006. The ferry departed from Duba port in Saudi Arabia around 7 p.m., heading to Safaga port in Egypt, with a journey time expected to be about 7 hours. One of the survivors, Saudi journalist Mohammed al-Mashwat, documented his experience in a book. He and his friend Saud decided to take a short vacation and travel to Egypt. Due to it being mid-year vacation season and the end of the Hajj, flights were fully booked, so they chose to travel by ferry. The ferry was scheduled to depart at 10:30 a.m., so they traveled overnight without sleep to arrive on time. However, they were informed of delays, first to 2 p.m., then to 4 p.m. Eventually, they boarded and rested in their cramped cabin. Mohammed woke up after 8 p.m. to find the ferry had been sailing for about an hour. He was shocked by the number of passengers. Suddenly, Saud woke up screaming that he smelled smoke. Mohammed rushed outside and saw smoke rising from below. Panic had already taken over the ship. He quickly woke his friend, and they joined other passengers on deck. The next 5 hours were a nightmare, as the ferry slowly made its way to the bottom of the sea. The ferry was crowded with families, pilgrims returning from Hajj, and laborers who hadn't seen their families in years. Gifts and luggage covered the deck, and terrified parents clung to their children, hoping for the best. The crew kept reassuring everyone that the fire was small and under control, but they were lying. The fire, believed to have started in the engine room due to poor maintenance, or possibly truck drivers making tea in the garage, began to spread. The procedure should have involved pumping seawater to extinguish the fire and then draining it back into the sea. But the pumps failed, and the drainage system wasn't functioning either. Despite the fire worsening, the captain refused to return to Saudi Arabia, even though Duba port was still visible. He didn't issue any distress calls, and instead increased the ferry's speed to try and reach Egypt. He also gave orders not to deploy lifeboats or distribute life jackets. Unbelievable negligence. As the water filled the lower levels, the ferry began to tilt. Children cried, and passengers panicked. People broke into the cabinets to grab life jackets, but there weren't enough for everyone. The situation spiraled out of control. After 3 hours, the captain finally sent a distress signal. But then, as survivors say, he and 3 others were seen escaping on a lifeboat, never to be seen again. The ship tilted further and was about to capsize. Mohammed was separated from his friend Saud, who fell into the sea. Mohammed knew he had no choice but to jump. Explosions began coming from the engine room, and the cold, dark water was waiting. He swam away from the ferry to avoid the vortex that would suck everything down when it sank. Floating in freezing water, surrounded by screams and the dead or dying, he tried to survive. Worse yet, the area was known for sharks. He was lucky to get onto an inflatable raft. But even then, others clung to ropes and screamed for help as rafts became overloaded and started to sink one by one. People spent over 16 hours in the water. Ships passed by, including one from the same company, St. Catherine, but did not stop. The ferry wasn't even reported missing until the next morning. Only after 20 hours did rescue teams arrive. Helicopters circled and dropped aid. By late afternoon the next day, they began pulling bodies and survivors from the sea. Out of approximately 1,400 to 1,500 passengers, only about 400 survived. Over 1,000 lives were lost. Many bodies never found. Survivors' stories are heartbreaking. One young girl clung to a lifeboat rope, denied entry, only for half her body to later be found, the rest eaten by sharks. A child lost all her family. A mother lost her baby to the waves. ? As for Mamdouh Ismail, owner of the ferry, he and his son fled the country before rescue even began. Legal proceedings dragged on until 2008. In the end, they were acquitted, but public outrage forced an appeal. In 2009, Ismail was sentenced in absentia to 7 years for negligence causing death. Yet he remained in hiding, and in 2014, the sentence expired legally, and his name was removed from the watch list. He didn't spend a single day in jail, despite over 1,000 souls perishing.